Welcome to the Hometown Gym Podcast, the place where we teach parents and those new to fitness the best practices of physical health so that you can have the ability to run around and keep up with your kids and grandkids, and so that you can smile when you look at yourself in the mirror, and most importantly, that you live a pain-free, happy, and long life.
It was November 2023. I was preparing for a trip to Charleston, South Carolina to visit my brother, some of my best friends, and it was a trip that most would look forward to. Golf, warm weather, shenanigans with your best buddies, and 4 days of it all. I was looking forward to it, except for the drive. In 2021, my wife and I did a long drive to Michigan to visit my family for Thanksgiving, and on that drive, my back got agitated, and ever since that time, my back was really never the same. For a long time, it was just mild lower back pain, more annoying than anything else, but never anything that crazy. I chalked it up to aging. I'm in my 30s now, and maybe even poor performance positions when lifting or doing CrossFit. However, in November 2023, my back was in some serious trouble. The pain had gone from maybe a 3 or a 4 out of 10 to a 7 or 8 when I was in a sitting position for long periods of time, and in particular, when I would drive. As I prepped for the trip to Charleston, I recalled something that Dr. Jim Kennedy had shared with me maybe 18 months prior. You should invest in an orthopedic seat cushion for your car. It's a simple device, it's not expensive, but it'll make sure your spine is aligned in a neutral position when you're sitting in the car. I needed something to get through this 8-hour drive without agonizing over sitting down, so I scrolled through Amazon, found something with some decent reviews, and hit purchase. At that point, I pretty much had nothing to lose. What happened over the first 8 hours of that drive and the weekend was nothing short of a miracle. And for the first time in 2 years, my back pain was starting to dissipate and improve. Dr. Jim Kennedy is a doctor of chiropractic care, specializes in helping athletes. And Jim, in particular, is a good friend of mine who's helped me through knee, hip, back injuries, and has just helped me in general just maintain my body through time. And he's here with me today. Jim, welcome to the show. I'm almost embarrassed to tell that story because I'm sure you're hearing, back pain for 2 years, and there's just all sorts of sirens going off in your head, right?
Yeah, but but that's a big part of what I do for people is I help educate them. And you think something as innocent as sitting down and driving or sitting down for work behind a computer is innocent, but there's big ramifications for that. Human society, we are not designed to sit for 8 hours a day, 50 weeks a year on repeat from the age 20 to 60. That has some big ramifications. So yeah, we can start it from there, honestly.
Dude, it was such a crazy experience, and I'm so glad that you shared that with me. I'm ashamed of myself that I didn't make an adjustment sooner. But here's what happened, right? So it's an 8-hour drive from the Northern Virginia area to the Charleston, South Carolina area, and I was like, well, I'm gonna, I'll sit on this thing and we'll see how it's going. 4 hours into the drive, I was like, oh man, like my back feels okay, and I got out to stand up, and I was so used to just basically there being pain there, but I stood up and it was better all of a sudden. And I was so shocked by that. And it wasn't like it went away kind of overnight, but it improved. And I was so shocked that it had done that fast at that point. But what is it about the seat cushion or whatever that is that's putting the back into a neutral position there that's going to help Jim?
Yeah, so the way that you can think about it is the body is very adaptive, and it's going to adapt to the positions that you put it in. When we sit for long periods of time, our hip flexors get really tight. The hip flexors come off of your lower back, and if you stay in that position all the time, it's going to be really hard for you to hit full hip extension, which is when you're standing up nice and tall. That's why you see when old people get out of the rocking chair, grabbing their lower back as they go to stand up. That's because of how tight your hip flexors can get. When you have that much pressure applied for that much time, it really causes issues for the lower back. So a big part of my job, is getting people out of pain, but also educating them on hey, why are you in pain to begin with? The human, the American Heart Association recommends 10,000 steps a day as a minimum. Okay, that's 5 miles. Most people are not getting 5 miles a day because nowadays everybody's working from home behind a TV, behind their computer, sitting in that bad position. So, me educating people, getting standing desks, getting orthopedic seat cushions, putting your back in the best position to succeed.
Yeah, and guess what I'm sitting on right now? I sit on this thing all the time.
Is
Pretty
it one of
much.
those
It's
the
it's
X
an
track?
No, that's actually a good idea. No, it's the orthopedic seat cushion. It's right. I can just move it from one place to another, which is really nice. And the next thing that's going to be coming for me, Jim, is going to be the standing desk. I can't believe I haven't gotten one yet. I need to see if I can get one at work, but you also recommended that. And that's something else that I haven't done, but I would also enjoy that because I can't, it's just hard for me to sit still for long periods of times. You can see me kind of, moving and doing a bunch of things there, but that's going to be coming next.
Yeah, so the standing desk, there's so much research on standing desks, it's insane, because one of the most expensive things for businesses is their healthcare costs, and
Yeah.
when people get hurt working. And again, if you're sitting all day, that's going to put your back in a bad position, and then workman's comp goes through the roof. So now companies prophylactically spend money on buying standing desks for people and doing all this stuff. Not only does it make give you a better chance of not having low back pain, but it also makes their employees way more productive. You're way more attentive and alert. And that's a great way to keep your employees happy, keep them healthy and keep them efficient. And they're seeing that a little bit of money on the front end pays huge dividends on the back end.
I never even thought of that from a cost perspective, but that's 100% true. When you think about, we all have health insurance, but it's the company that's paying the premiums and ultimately paying the insurance company that amount of money for most businesses in that end anyway. Jim, I love to start the show with just what you're working on personally regarding your physical health. What are you working on in the gym or nutritionally, man? What's going on?
So from a workout perspective, I started coaching CrossFit about a year ago, and
Nice.
I was over at Black Widow over in Sterling,
Yep, I know
and
it.
did that for a year, which was a lot of fun. I'm at a couple CrossFit gyms here. One I basically train at with Lauren, and then the other one I'm going to be coaching at soon. That's a very small chunk of my time. I'm trying to get clinic number two up and running. Sold my clinic in Northern Virginia, and then now I just opened my second clinic on Thursday last week. So trying to get all my ducks in a row.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that you were on the coaching side of CrossFit. That has got to be such a good experience. And I may have to just travel all the way down to North Carolina just to experience what you would be like in a CrossFit session, right? I've experienced you in a one-on-one, just physical maintenance or rehab session, Jim. I got to imagine the CrossFit session's got to be pretty awesome. What do you think of coaching so far?
I love it. So like hand in glove with exactly what I'm doing all day with patients. It's just like it. What I really like about it is like now I'm affecting way more people, and helping people achieve their health and wellness goals. And a little bit of prevention goes way more than when you're trying to save people after they've already fallen off the edge. And people being active, eating well, eating healthy, training, hydrating, moving can go so far. And it's just like our society's just not designed for that anymore. And you really have to go out of your way to be healthy. It's not easy to. The other question you asked is like, how am I eating? I eat really clean. I eat whole animals. I eat whole vegetables, whole fruits, and try and stay away from the processed stuff. I think that if a lot of people, we're looking for dietary guidelines, if you do that, you're hitting 90% of what you need to do, and staying away from the processed stuff is huge.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different eating styles, habits, fads, but you don't have to overcomplicate it. I mean, what Jim said, it really is that simple, right? And I think a lot of this kind of, at least for fitness, a lot of it is, hey, I want to be attractive. I certainly got into fitness because of that realm, right? Which is certainly true, but that's kind of a byproduct of everything that we're going to do. The goal here at Hometown Gym is just to educate people with fitness related material, Jim, so that we can live a long life, right? I've got another kid on the way. I want to be here for them their entire lives, right? And I want to be functional throughout that entire time. And if you're doing exactly what you just said, eating whole animals, whole vegetables, whole fruits, I mean, it really is that easy. And a byproduct of that, by the way, is going to be if you're overweight, you're going to lose weight if you're going to eat that style. It's just, is it as tasty as, processed sugar, processed foods? It's probably not. So I love that you said that. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I forget what show it was. I think it was the Colbert Report, but he basically had this guy on, and he was a engineer for a food company.
Yeah.
And he's like, and they're doing the interview, and it's about Pringles. And do you know the tagline for Pringles?
No, lay it on me.
Once you pop, you don't stop.
Yeah.
So once you pop that thing open, you don't stop eating it. And it's because that's the way that they design these foods. They're enough flavor that you want it, but not enough to satisfy you. Okay. And that's done very intentionally so that you continue to eat and eat and eat. Whereas, as you've done before, have you ever overeaten apples?
No, so I
Yeah.
love that you're going on this one too. It's not likely to happen, right? I think ghrelin's the hormone that's associated with satiety, right? And so
Yeah.
we've never talked about this on the podcast before, Jim. I love it. Continue with this. No, I've never been or never had the urge to just continue to eat like an entire bushel of apples. I'd have like maybe two, and I would probably be pretty satisfied at that point.
Yeah, I mean, usually after, I mean, nowadays the apples are so big, you have one, you're pretty satisfied, but like you're
Yeah.
not going to overdo it. Like I would challenge someone to try and overdo it on those, and you won't because naturally your body has to digest it. It's going to be slower absorbing because of the fiber content, and you're going to get satisfied. Whereas like once you pop open the Pringles, like you're not going to stop until the whole thing is gone, and that's done with intention. And that's why one of the old adages that you used to hear was like shop on the outside of the grocery stores.
Yeah.
You want to shop where the food, if your food doesn't go bad after a week, it's probably not going to be healthy for you because they've filled it with all this other stuff to preserve it. You want to eat as natural, as clean as possible. So those are like the simplest ways to really do it. And then if you want to eat for performance, that's a whole different, that's when, if you're eating naturally, that's when you get 90%. That last 10% is if you really want to start fine tuning it, then you could really start paying attention to your macros, macros being, fat, carbs, and protein intake to hit whatever your specific goals are.
Yeah, and then you get into the whole realm of nutrient timing and all that, which it gets super interesting. Man, I love that we kicked it off in nutrition and just going back to like shopping around the aisles, doing all that, eating whole foods. Like, I want to talk a little bit since we're on this concept, Jim. Just marketing is marketing is a bear, right? And a lot of the big food companies use marketing to just sell products, right? They might say, hey, this has 10 grams of protein, but a granola bar is going to be like, laced with like a bunch of sugar processed stuff. And if you look on the ingredient labels, I mean, if it's just stacked with, I mean, you could see dozens of different things that it's made with. It's probably not good for you, and it's probably too good to be true. And I would say if it is too good to be true, it probably is. So I would stick with what Dr. Jim's saying here. If you're looking to better yourself nutritionally, feel better, increase your longevity in life. Outside of the aisles for the grocery store, eating whole foods, whole vegetables, whole fruits,
Mhm.
recipe for success right there.
Yeah, and then the other thing too that I used to fall victim to is drinking my calories.
Yeah.
You
Tell me
don't really
more.
think about it. When I was in my 20s, I would definitely have fun on the weekends and go out, and then you work out all week, and then you let loose on the weekend, and then you're just chasing it and chasing it and chasing it. Whereas if you're doing things the right way and not drinking your calories, whether it be alcohol or soda or whatever you're into, it's going to be way easier as well. You can't out train a bad diet. That's time tested.
Yeah, 100% there, Jim. And just going back to you, man. Hey, where are you from? How'd you get to North Carolina eventually?
Yeah, so I'm from Long Island, New York originally. My parents owned a wholesale and retail farm and greenhouse business. Did my undergrad in upstate New York, did my grad school for my chiropractic degree in upstate New York, bounced around to Northern Virginia for 5 years. Worked as an associate doctor when I first graduated, and then during COVID, made my own business up. And then I liked Northern Virginia, but as some people may know, it's a bit expensive. So I
Just a little
decided
bit.
so I decided to bounce around, and now I'm with my life partner down here, and I'm really enjoying North Carolina so far. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. What was it like growing up? Gosh, you grew up on a farm. I didn't even know that. What was it like growing up there?
It was like no one thinks of New York as being really rural, but when you get out to Eastern Long Island, it's a lot of farmland and wineries and vineyards and stuff like that. Small town. I probably graduated like 300 people. But we would help out on the farm and in the greenhouses whenever we could. Parents would work 7 days a week, you know. Then we'd get off from about right after Halloween to about, probably about this time of year is when we'd start planning for the greenhouses. So we just worked and always helped each other and, played sports growing up. I got injured playing football, and that's a chiropractor put me back together. And that's when the light bulb went off for me. I was like, well, I mean, I thought I was done for the season. He put me back together in a week, and I was just so elated. I was like, I want to do that for people someday. So that's really what sparked my interest in the field.
What did you injure? What happened?
I had a hip flexor injury, and if you've ever pulled your hip flexor before, you basically cannot generate any speed or run whatsoever because every time you go to lift your leg up, it's excruciating pain. And so this guy, I got hurt on a Monday, and we had a game against the rivals on Friday, and I just did everything he told me religiously, and I was able to play in the game on Friday like it was like nothing had happened. So it was a really awesome experience.
And then from that moment, you were like, "Hey, this is what I want to do," or did it take a little bit more discovery to kind of figure that out?
Um, it did take a little bit more discovery. I still continued playing sports all throughout high school. Got injured a couple times in college and just kept going back to the well. And I just remember every time I'd be in his office, I'd be asking him a million questions, and it was just like I just had this thirst for knowledge on the topic that I just couldn't quench. So I was like, this is a good fit for me. Can make a living doing it, and it was 50-50 between physical therapy and chiropractic. And after a bunch of shadowing, it was such a perfect fit for me with chiropractic that it's the way I went.
I love that. Um, Want to transition a little bit, and I'm going to interweave your story, Jim, with back pain here because that's kind of where we kicked it off.
Sure.
From what you see, what are the most common causes of back pain for your clients that you see?
The most common cause of low back pain unequivocally is sitting all day.
Who'd
Just
have
like we
guessed that?
started, just like we started this off with. What ends up happening is your quads and your hip flexors get really tight, your glutes get really weak, and that creates a muscle imbalance. It puts a ton of pressure onto the lower back. And initially, what happened with you is what happens with most people. You're in your 20s, it's a 2 or a 3 out of 10, it's not a big deal. But as time goes on and things progress, then you're putting your back at a really bad mechanical advantage. And then you go to do something you've done a million times, whether it's lifting weights at the gym or just picking up your newspaper roll off the ground, and then something bad happens. And
Hey, team, we hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick break and ask that wherever you're watching or listening to the show, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon, the way that the show will reach more people searching for content on the platform is if we have more reviews. Our mission at Hometown Gym is to help parents and people improve their physical and mental health through fitness so that they can live an awesome, pain-free, and happy life. And an easy way for us to help reach more people is if you could actually scroll down to the review section, give us a 5-star review, and maybe share a little blurb about how you've enjoyed the show or which piece of content has had an impact on your life. From the bottom of our hearts and the future listener who reads your message and starts to take action in their life, we thank you very, very much. Let's get back to the show.
a little bit of prevention on the front end could pay dividends. It's actually really analogous to the diet conversation that we had. If people clean up their diet on the front end, then they won't deal with the diabetes and all the maladies that come with that on the back end when you get older. If you're just gaining 2 pounds every year, oh, it's not that big a deal. I'm getting older, 2 pounds here or there. But after a decade and decade and decade, you're looking at a completely different human that's not thriving anymore. It's the same thing with your lower back. If we're just constantly, hurting it a little bit, there's a cumulative effect here. And a big part of my job is getting people out of pain, but also educating them on what got them there in the first place.
And you're really, really good about that. I know we talked about a couple of different ways, obviously, using orthopedic seat cushions, getting up and moving, using a standing desk. Anything else that you would suggest for standard American just to improve their, and I'm going to say lower back pain, because that's kind of what I was dealing with, what I was curious, Jim, but just to improve their lumbar health at all?
Yeah, so you bring up a good point. Like what can most people do? Our society is so much different than other societies. If you go to other countries, people still squat to use the bathroom. They have access to full
Yeah.
ranges of motion because their society isn't built for comfort like ours. Most people, all they do all day is stand and sit and stand. Whereas in these other countries, everybody's moving, squatting, twisting, and turning, so they don't lose these ranges of motion. When you lose it, then you have to work to get it back. So what I would say is, staying mobile, moving a lot, sitting and putting your body in different positions to lengthen certain muscles. Kelly Starrett, who's like
Yeah.
my idol, like the gold standard in the PT universe. He has a bunch of books written on this, but one of the things that he tells his patients that I began telling mine was to sit on the floor. When you sit on the floor, you're going to sit, you're going to squirm, you're going to put your legs in all these different positions, and that lengthens different muscles. And your body is supposed to move in all these directions. We've just become this society that's been stuck in chairs and standing, and we're just really not designed or built for it.
When you say sit on the floor, are we just talking, hey, flat on the ground? Are you saying should we squat and like hold that position, just kind of let the lower the lumbar kind of flex in that position? What do you mean there?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. It's like you could play with it. You could be half
Yeah.
kneeling, you could be squatting, you could be 90-90, you could have your legs out in front of you, you could sit on your ankles, you could do any of those. And all of those positions have benefits because you're stretching one thing and relaxing another. And none of them are going to be particularly comfortable, especially if you haven't sat on the floor since you were in kindergarten, getting story time. But the way that the human body has developed over time is you should have access to all of those ranges of motion. And once you restore those range of motion, you'd be surprised at how many things just clear right up. The body is amazing. We're really strong and resilient creatures, and we forget that sometimes. Everyone thinks you need to take a pill or get surgery to fix something, but if we just treat humans like humans instead of like these sitting and standing cattle, it's really easy to fix it before you do need medicine, before you do need surgery.
Yeah, we'll link kind of pictures of all the different positions that Jim said alone, and I mean, you're mentioning different things like 90-90, sitting on my ankles, where I'm like, oh man, that'd be so good for just like ankle mobility, for example, which I know I need to improve just from sitting in a different spot that I'm going to be in. Um, Gosh, I lost my train of thought. I was going to ask you some other great question, Jim, and I already lost my train of thought for that. We'll come back to that. How'd you end up in CrossFit?
My brother John is a very, very good CrossFit athlete, and he drank the Kool-Aid early on. He probably drank the Kool-Aid when he was let me think. I think John was probably like 19 or 20.
Yeah.
John, like he was jacked, man. And he still is very jacked. And he's what comes after the open in CrossFit? It's like the semi.
Regionals historically. Yeah.
Well, it's like, is it semis and then quarters? How does it
So
go?
it's open quarters, semis. Historically, it was open regionals games.
Oh, okay. He's always the top 10%. He has been since
That's a
like
good CrossFitter, man.
he's a beast. His cardio is insane. He's a great athlete, but he got into it, and then I was wrapping up Cairo school, and in Cairo school I was playing probably 10 hours of basketball full court every, which is amazing. I loved it. But I wanted to get back into like weight training, and he was like, you got to do this, and I just got really lucky that it just translated perfectly into my profession too. Because CrossFit
100%.
was, CrossFitters just train and train and train and train. Overuse injuries, poor mechanic injuries and stuff, and it's been a great way for me to help influence a bunch of athletes so they could train harder, longer, and then get a lot more gain out of it. So my brother definitely was the one who pushed me to do it. I always made fun of him, until I stepped in, and then you just get humbled immediately, and then you're like, all right, it's time to get to work.
Yeah, I was that person too, by the way, that kind of made fun of it. I was like, oh, that can't be hard, or that can't be as hard as the curls I'm doing in front of the mirror.
Mhm.
Do you remember your first CrossFit experience and what it was like and what you did?
Oh yeah, I remember. I was a three-sport athlete in high school. Played basketball. At the club level in college and in grad school. So I thought I was in pretty good shape. And then I get to like my first CrossFit class, and there's these gentlemen in their 50s who were some ass kickers, man. And they whooped me up and down the floor. And I was like, how? How on earth? I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm fit. And these old guys just, they just smoked me in this workout. And I was like, all right, this is the secret. I was like, this is how you get fit. And all of these, like I had very good cardio, had nothing else. No
Yeah.
strength, no power, no gymnastics, no coordination. Um, and the only way that you get better at it is by doing it and just showing up and just being humble. So yeah, my first I got smoked. How about you?
I'll never forget it. It was a combination of rowing and overhead squats. And I was a strong guy, right? I've been weightlifting for a while. And I remember the weight for like overhead squats was like, I don't know, 95 pounds. And the thing that I love about an overhead squat is it will point out any imperfection that you have in a regular squat, unweighted or
Mhm.
weighted. And I was not a good mover. I thought I was, but I didn't know what a good mover looked like. Right. So I got humbled really quick when I'm trying to do an overhead squat with like an empty barbell, and I couldn't do it. Like there was a lot of problems: shoulder mobility, hip mobility, ankle mobility. And then I just couldn't get myself into that position. And so I was using a PVC pipe mixed with a rower and going extremely slow on the overhead
Yeah.
position, just because it was so hard for me to get my butt below my knees in that position. And I probably didn't even do it the first time that I did it. So I was last in the class, but drank the cool. I hooked just right away. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is where I want to be, and just loved all the different combinations of stuff. And then when you just go over.
Hey team, quick break from the show. At Hometown Gym, part of our mission is to give you time back in your day so you're not having to worry about, should I do cardio or strength in the gym, or what machines or movements should I do in my workout tomorrow. We want to do all that for you so you can spend as much time doing the things that you really love and spending time with your family. And new to Hometown Gym, we have nutrition programs and recipe packs. These guides include many, many recipes of high protein, 5 ingredient, and even gluten free options to optimize your nutrition. Within our nutrition packs are also sample weekly nutrition programs, so the meals are planned for you. And we even provide grocery lists so you don't have to put any thought into this at all. What's even better is the meals are set up to feed a family of 4, so you're not having to create multiple meals for the family. If you'd like more information, travel over to hometown.gym.net to check it out. Let's get back to the show.
I just think that's probably an area where CrossFit's done such a good job of just preparing, an individual just for life to a certain extent, right? As you're hitting so many different metabolic pathways. You're doing sprinting, you're going to do some longer distance stuff. You're hitting multiple modalities of just, cardio related functions, weightlifting, gymnastics. You can move your body through space. You can lift heavy things. You can lift light things, and through multiple planes of motion too. So it's just, I think it's a really cool program just for longevity in general to a certain extent. I've also been on the side of this where I've overtrained. I've done some dumb stuff.
Mhm.
I've hit some poor mechanics, but I do really enjoy that about CrossFit. And yeah, that first experience, man, it was unbelievably humbling. Um, you mentioned you were a 3-sport athlete: basketball, football. What was the third sport?
Lacrosse.
Gosh, yeah. So you're pure New Yorker when
Yeah.
it comes to sports. What were you like in school growing up? Did you care? Did you not care? What was that like?
Yeah, I was a good student, but I was a better socializer, as my teachers would say. I was definitely the one in high school that could talk to everybody and still get good grades. And my teachers would be like, Jim, we love you and everything, but you got to let the other kids learn too. So I definitely, I became a good student in college when that doesn't cut it anymore. I was in high school. It was a lot of fun, sports, and everything comes easy to you. But then when you get to college, you really have to put
Different
in the
level,
work.
dude. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say really was when I went to grad school, because in undergrad I went to a liberal arts college, and you have to take a lot of courses that aren't. I knew I was going to go this route, and while humanities is interesting, it wasn't really piquing my curiosity at the time. So when I hit grad school and everything was directly applicable to my career, that's when it really took off, and I learned how to become a good student. that was a big turning point. But yeah, I always enjoyed school. I certainly always enjoyed school, but I also enjoyed, being friends with everybody too.
You and I are very similar in this instance, and it's kind of funny too. Like when I also have a beard, people think that Jim and I are actually related. I can't tell you how many times it's Sydney. I don't know, like double take or like approach you in the gym. She's like, "Oh, that's Jim. It's not Brandon."
I'm
So
flattered. I'm flattered. That is like the nicest compliment you could have given me.
I appreciate that, Jim. Um, you mentioned 10 hours of basketball. Were you a main sport guy? What was your favorite sport to play? What were you best at?
Um, in high school, I would say football I was best at, and then in college, like once I hit Cairo school and undergrad, I was just playing so much basketball. It was, you just get really good at it. I was heavier in high school because I was playing football. Once I leaned out of it, basketball became really, really fun. But yeah, I love basketball. I still play every now and again here, but not as much as I'd like to.
I'm sure you will. Once you get the clinic up and running, you'll be able to put some more time into that facet. What positions did you play?
Defensive end, tackle, and then in basketball, I played the 4 or the 5, power forward and center.
Yeah.
Yeah, the basketball I still love a lot. Football I love watching, but obviously you can't really play football when you're an adult anymore, unfortunately.
No, we used to
Yeah,
run like flag football leagues, but it's not quite the same, I'm sure, as going out there and hitting people in high school, right?
it doesn't scratch the same itch. Yeah,
You've always been an absolute monster on the machines. You said that your cardio was really, really good. That come naturally? Is that genetics? Did you run a lot growing up? How did you get so good on the machines, Jim?
my dad was a collegiate wrestler, and he said that strength was never his strong suit, but he could always outlast everybody when it came to whatever exercises they were doing.
Yeah.
My brother was on the high school soccer team, and he played club soccer at Cornell, and it was the same
Dang.
thing. He was never the fastest, but he could outrun everybody when it came to distance, and that was probably the same with me. It was like, not the strongest, not the fastest, but I could last with, the best. I like to, that's the one thing that's been my saving grace in CrossFit. It's just those monostructural movements is I can go pretty good, but,
Yeah, I can recall coming into the gym a few times, and yeah, you look at the leaderboard for fun, and there'd be like, I don't know, 2K row on there. We do some running thing, and like you and Jordan, we're always like right up there. I'd be like, boy, those guys are fast. Have you ever done a 2K row time trial before?
I don't know. I know they did one in Verity when I first joined, but
Yeah,
I have not done one recently, but, yeah, I could pull that rower pretty good now. Yeah.
I think you would pull a very impressive time on there, and I was programming for myself literally before this podcast and just stretching it out, and I'm like looking at my whole sheet and balancing everything out. I'm like, oh man, like 2K row could work here, but 2K row is also like it's like a mile run. It's like a 6 to 7 minute sprint. It's pretty agonizing. But I'd be very interested to see what you could pull, Jim, and see if you could get pretty close to like a 6 minute time frame. I'm pretty
Oh
confident that
God,
you
that would
would
hurt.
you would pull pretty well.
That would hurt so bad. And when I was in Cairo school, one of my roommates and one of my best friends to this day, he ran track and field in college. So I would go to the track and run with him. And a time trial mile, where like, there's different phases of mile running. You could be at like the 10-minute mile type person, the 7, the 6, the 5. And I was between the 5 and the 6. And I just remember you just feel like you're sprinting the whole time. It's
So
terrible. It's
it's
terrible.
ironic you bring this up. So growing up, that's what I did. I played basketball, right? But I was a long distance runner. I ran cross country and track and field, and I was like a mile specialist.
Oh
And
no.
it's like 5 minutes of just sprinting. It's
Yeah.
not a light jog. I think when people think, of a mile, they're like, that's a long distance to go. And for some it is, and that's okay. But like when
Mm.
you're really racing, it's one of the most agonizing races or periods of performance that you could put into fitness. It's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone thinks of a mile like, oh, that's long distance running. Like you're just like
No.
trotting out there. It's like when you get to that level, what was your best mile time?
The fastest mile I ever ran was a 4:36.
Get out of here. Oh
It was
my
again, it
God.
was it was my thing. That was in high school, right? So I was
Yeah.
also I don't know, 6 feet tall. I was probably 135 pounds soaking
Yeah.
wet when I was in high school as well, their gym. Right. And also I got the privilege to run for two schools that had very good running programs. So it
Mhm.
also helped that. And I wasn't even remotely the best person on the team when I ran that time like that. So which is very interesting. But yeah, that's the fastest one that I ran. And yeah, it didn't matter if it was, 5:10, 4:36 when you were going your best. It it just really hurts. It's not
Yeah,
a fun
like,
race.
you just like before you do it, you're just like, all right, like I just got to go to the pain cave. It's like, it's like, it's crazy. What are your splits at that? Every quarter's got to be like, what, a minute 12? Wow.
Yeah, I think that's where
That's
the math
crazy.
works out,
Yeah.
so I can remember coming across like the half in about 2:16 or
Oh my
so, and
God.
I was like, okay, this could be really good. And the third lap is kind of where the race is won or lost personally, or actually in
Yeah.
the performance, right? Because that's where a lot of people fall. That's where I would historically fall off, and held on and had a really good race. That race, that was really cool.
You should be very proud of that. That's
I
crazy.
I appreciate that. It's something I'll probably no, it's something I will never touch ever again, and I don't care to. But back in the day, I could run a quick mile. It wasn't too bad, man. So, um, going back to back pain,
Mhm.
what pieces of mobility could assist somebody with lower back pain there, Jim? What would you suggest there?
Yeah, the two most common things that I will give to someone to do who is dealing with low back pain is foam rolling the quads, which, it's not just rolling back and forth. There's certain mechanics you could do on that foam roller to make it really worth your time. And then getting into full hip extension, which would either be the standing heel to butt quad stretch or couch stretch. Both of those, if you can't get in a couch stretch position and touch your shoulders to the wall, then you're lacking mobility there. And it's a brutal type of stretch. I really do prefer the standing heel to butt stretch. It's not as aggressive, but it gets the job done just the same way. But that is where the overwhelming majority of people who are dealing with non what we call non-complicated low back pain would really benefit from. And complicated low back pain being like disc issues, disc derangement, disc herniations, sciatica. That requires a different set of exercises and recovery. But for most people, the 90% of low back pain falls into the mechanical low back pain, and that's generally the cause of it is tight hip flexors and limited hip mobility. The hip is a ball and socket joint, and that means that it has a tremendous amount of flexibility. If you do not have full range of motion in the hips, you're going to put stress in other areas, primarily the lower back or in the knees. And if you maintain hip mobility, you'd be so shocked at like how much better the body feels and operates as a whole.
Hey, listeners, first, thanks so much for listening to the show. A quick reminder here, if you're new to the gym or you're not sure what to do or how to start, navigate over to hometownGym.net. This is our website where we have fitness programs for beginners where you can start with a sample class at no cost to you with support 7 days per week. In addition to that, we have even more free content through the website over there. Again, that's hometownGym.net. Thanks so much. And we're back to our show.
I would never, and this goes back to when we were dealing with my knee pain. Right. We started with the quads, and I remember you were just pressing your thumbs into my quad, and my quad was so tight. I remember I used to think about like rolling on it, and I thought I was like rolling on my femur
Mm-hmm.
because it was so hard and it was so painful, but it was just that my quad was literally, I guess, that short. And just I don't know what word you would use for that, Jim, but it's funny that you think like, hey, we're gonna treat the hip, but we're gonna do the leg. Is that because that's gonna treat the hip flexor there? What's the process behind that?
Yeah, so when people are dealing with low back pain, they're like, "Oh, well, my pain is up here," and that's where the smoke is, but that's not where the fire necessarily is. The hip flexors come off of every bone in the low back. They attach to every bone in the pelvis, and then they come down and plug in onto the front of the hip. The muscles that also plug in onto the front of the hip are the quads. So when one of those areas is tight, the other is going to be tight. So you need to treat both of them. And that's why, the rolling the quads, that's going to mechanically lengthen those, and it's going to help desensitize that area. And then it's going to make it really more effective for when you go to do your couch stretch or your standing heel to butt stretch, because now you're going to have access to deeper ranges of motion. And then really putting the icing on top is doing the rehabilitation to, ingrain those new motor pathways to teach your body that you have full flexibility and full range of motion, and that it's not going to injure you. It's when I get new patients in, sometimes they just want it to be like, one and done. And it's like, yeah, I wish everything was that simple, but you don't gain a ton of weight by having one meal. You've been eating a certain way all this time. You've been treating your back a certain way this whole time. Now we got to undo it. And there's so much that I could do in the office, but the other thing that I keep harping on is the education and empowering the patient. Like, hey, you're in the driver's seat here. I don't control you when you go home and you sit in front of your computer. I can tell you that that's not the right thing to do for your spine, and but it's up to them to to come to that conclusion, like, hey, I need to make a lifestyle change if I'm going to get out of this pain. And it really, it sounds so simple, but just once you get that standing desk, you're going to see the difference.
It's the same thing with nutrition coaching, right? When I would work with people in the past on that, is I can calculate macronutrients, we can go over kind of a sample meal plan or go through the different things that you're going to eat, but I can't like be there to be, put the food into your mouth that you're going to end up
Yeah.
consuming. Love the analogy there. As far as lifting goes, and I don't know if lifting should be the first thing that we talk about when we come to, supporting, lumbar health, but is there anything from a lifting perspective that you can say, hey, this can maybe help improve some stuff maybe that we wouldn't typically think of, Jim?
One exercise that which certainly helps with a lot of mechanics is something that has become really popular online in the past couple of years. And do you follow the knees over toes guy?
Ben Patrick's the man, 100%.
And Patrick. Yeah, and his one exercise that has a lot of scalable options is the split squat. And it's not a traditional lunge. It's a forward lunge with the front leg being in full ankle flexion, knee flexion, hip flexion, and the back leg being in full hip extension, knee extension, and ankle flexion. And that combination of being loaded through that full range of motion is a really potent tool to help athletes warm up, to cool down, similar to what you said, how an overhead squat can highlight problems with your traditional squat. I could look at your split squat and tell you what ranges of motion you're missing. So it's a really good screening tool, as well as the antidote to people's problems as well. Kind of like, you're a CrossFit coach, the Bergner warm up, right? It's
Oh
like
yeah.
salvation lies within. It's like, if you're really bad at this, we can really highlight it and with the Bergner warm up, and we could also treat it with the Bergner. It's like the same thing could be said for the function of the lower body when we're looking at the ATG split squat. If you can't keep your heel on the ground during the split squat, you got limited ankle flexion. If you can't make your hamstring touch your calf, you have limited knee flexion. If you can't fully extend your back leg, that means your hip flexors are tight, and so on and so forth. So we can we can look at each segment of that movement and figure out where people are getting tied up, and then make recommendations to correct those issues. So that's one that is a good movement standard for most people to have.
Yeah, we'll link all that below. That's something that we incorporate with hometown gym programming, as well as multiple variations of kind of what Ben Patrick has put together. His stuff's incredible. It's helped my knees out. I do the split squat. It's a really, really good movement for that. Jim, you started multiple clinics, man. Built one,
Mm-hmm.
sold one. How's the business going down there?
I just started. I took a month off because you can't just like roll into town and hang a shingle up and expect people to come. So I was just getting to know people in the community. There was a CrossFit competition 2 weeks ago now, and I brought my table out, my tent out, and was just helping people. Um, and the community here is incredible. And I had a lot of people come in, and we're just trying to help people move better and train harder and be more efficient. The other thing that I want to start getting into, I mean, you're talking about this over text a bit, is the golf community.
Yeah.
There's a huge golf community down here in the Pinehurst area, and I'm doing some extra certifications to be I'm not a great golfer by any stretch of the imagination, so I want to get get good playing the sport myself, and then try and help them out too, because I think that would be a fun athletic population to work with.
I can only imagine you would help out a lot of those guys, talk about like overuse stuff and just imbalances that could exist with golf because you're doing the same motion over and over and over again,
Well,
right?
it's funny you say that because I don't know what the weather's been by you, but it's been lovely down here. I mean, for February, it was like in the 60s yesterday. Guys, don't stop golfing year round. You could golf year round here.
You
It's
make me
really
jealous,
crazy.
Jim. It's not been that nice here. It's been cold.
Yeah.
Don't you miss Northern Virginia?
Yeah, right. It's man, I go when I'm driving around town, I drive, there's so many golf courses I drive by, people are always out playing. So like they're the same thing as CrossFit. It gets super addicting and you just want to keep going. And sometimes a little being a little proactive can make a huge difference. And figuring out what the common issues are with CrossFit athletes. That's what made it really easy to treat them, is you treat a bunch of super tight lats, super tight hips, and then you got CrossFit figured out. Now it's time to figure out what ails the golf community.
You're in a perfect place to be able to do that. Well, I love that. And I know you do great work. You've helped me personally through so many different things there, Jim. That's awesome. What are one or two things that you've learned through just operating your business that have had the biggest impact on your life so far?
The newest business has been a real eye opener for me.
Hmm.
In the last business I had, I always wore it as like this badge of honor that I didn't do any marketing. I was like, no, I don't need to market it. I was busy enough. It was fine. And it's such a silly mentality to have, because I just didn't want to step out of my comfort zone. Um, and I also, this time around, have paid for coaching and business coaching. In my schooling, and this is something that could be shown in life in general, is like you have to realize where you need help with something if you want to grow. And to go forge down the path alone, sure, you could do that. That's what I did. I hit my head on every speed bump that there was in navigating the healthcare landscape in the United States and insurance and everything, and it was a nightmare. I loved it, but I made it a lot harder for myself. And so this time I decided to be proactive, and I read some books and I got in touch with some authors, and I signed up for some business coaching. And I can't even, it was really expensive and it's paid dividends. Like I was really nervous about it, and it's like transformed the way I view what I do. And now I'm going to be able to have a bigger impact on more people. So that's really, a wonderful thing. So I'm super excited. Like hit the ground running this past week and just going to keep going. So my advice would be, if when you're getting into anything, whether it's nutrition, health, or fitness, find people who've been there and done that and learn from them, so that you don't have to flail and fail miserably just to learn from your own mistakes. Learn from other people's mistakes. Stand on the shoulders of giants, and you'll be happy. So that's something that this time around I'm very excited about.
That's going to be awesome, man. I totally get you on the marketing aspect of things. There's some stuff I like to do, posting on social media, 100%, not one of them. Sitting down, creating
Yeah,
a post
not
content, and there's more to marketing than just that. But that's the one where I'm not a big social media guy myself, which may come as a surprise to people because I'm posting on about this stuff all the time. But that's like the one thing where I'm like, I would really like to offload it, learn more. I need to learn from somebody. So, Jim, I appreciate you saying that and being humble with that, man. It's kind of hard to admit the stuff that we need help on or we're not so good at, but that's really key. I love that.
Yeah, and just learning from other people. And the other thing too is, the social media is a great tool, but the other thing that's also lacking like crazy is just human to human interaction, and getting out and getting involved in your community and meeting people. And that's a really in anything, I think that is the most potent way to impact and influence others. I can't tell you how many times I've been on social media and I find a video of like, this exercise that'll cure this issue and whatever, and you watch the video, you're like, oh, that sounds great, and then you just never do the exercise. And
Yeah.
you're like, or you see this meal that someone made, and you're like, oh, I'm going to save this video so I can make it, and then you never do it. So like, you can only get so far with social media. Whereas like if you're having a real eye to eye interaction with someone and you're telling them to do something, or that we crave human to human interaction. It's the foundation of what being a human is, is that we're all in this together. And, I think that's really what marketing can and should be. And then the social media is a portion of that. But, if you cover your foundation of, face to face first, then, things are going to work out for you.
Yeah, I love that, man. And that's the part that I really enjoy, right? That was the part of coaching or just going out to the local gym or whoever that was the most enjoyable for, at least for me personally. Love that you said that, Jim. What's next for you? What's next for the business, man?
Just keeping growing. Just gonna, work on a bunch of, workshops. I think you might have been to ones I did at Verity, but
Yep.
injury screens, shoulder workshops, things like that, just to get involved in the community and give back. When you give a lot, people give a lot back. So see how that goes. So and my brother just had a baby, so I'm flying up to New York this weekend. So that's the other thing I'm really looking forward to.
First one, second one.
Yeah, his first. Yeah, yep.
Is this your inauguration to becoming an uncle, or do you have other nieces or nephews?
Uh, so my sister is 4 years older than me, and she has a 2-year-old. And
I
then
gotcha.
John is just had him and his wife Casey just had their first baby. So I get to go meet my niece for the first time. So very excited.
Oh, congrats, man. That's a beautiful time. Being an uncle is the best. You get to have all the
Yeah,
fun, and at the end of the day, you're like, here you
yeah,
go. You get to have them back.
yeah, man. Well, I'm super excited for you in Sydney, man. That's incredible. You guys are killing
We're
it.
yeah, we're stoked, man. It's gonna be really cool. All right, Jim. Any closing thoughts here before I let you jump here for the rest of your holiday?
10,000 steps a day, eat real food, and move a lot and often.
Dr. Jim Kennedy's rules for life. That simple. Jim, I appreciate you, everything you've done for me personally, and for giving me your time today, man. Thank you so much for coming in and dropping in at Hometown Gym for the listeners out there. We'll link all of Jim's stuff here. Jim, if you're on social media, we'll link all that stuff, site, all that good stuff as well. If you guys got questions, reach out to us, reach out to him. We'll go from there. Jim, you're the man. Thanks for
Awesome,
joining me.
man. Of course. Have a good one.